comments. Because of all the events that's happened today, I think it'd be smart that we don't talk about a lot of these things, because even the last meeting, we felt like we were lacking in a quorum being at the table. All five of you being at this table, not calling in or not being able to be present. They're important items to your city and to your team here. So we're gonna ask for a few things to be postponed, if that would be agreeable.
Should we go through and identify those now?
Yes, we can. I think that'd be helpful. Gordon, help me make sure we don't.
Yeah.
Chris is here, we'll let him, that one. We do wanna hit those on the minutes.
I wanna go over that.
I think it'd probably be good. I could come back next time if we need to, if you guys feel like we need to address more, but we can at least address some.
So I know in my preparation tonight, I watched the meeting, the prior meeting that I missed, and hopefully everybody.
I know
can do
you
that
all
one.
want to hear what your planning commission's thinking about and what their concerns are, and so you can build that relationship, so you can understand one another's
And hopefully
wants
don't
and
have to
needs.
come back.
Yeah, just if you're here, and let's have a minute to listen to and watch it, yeah.
So, we're gonna continue and let Wendy do her presentation. Blake on to Houston, because that's, we need to get on the record where we're at with that, so the public and the council knows where we're going. That's just an update. Creek Ridge, development agreement, we're asking to, we could touch upon that, but in reality, we're just getting information anyway. It's a long ways from any type of, serious conversation about approval, so there's a lot of moving parts on that one, and the, we probably could talk a little bit about Game Point.
I think it'd be good just to show you what they're having, because what we intend is the planning commission's going to see it, and then it's gonna be voted and brought to you. So the thought would be, we don't want you to see it for the first time when we bring it back. It'd be good just, so tonight is no, it's just to show you what the planning commission's seeing, so you can see what they're seeing. That's the idea. So when it gets to you, you can, and of course, Chris could just explain a little bit about their thoughts on it too, so they had comments.
And same comments on 3.7 Mountain Ridge development. It's still a lot of moving parts in it. We
It's
can
just the
update
public sees
information
stuff,
that's-
and we just thought it'd be valuable for you to see things.
Conversations.
If you wanna see them, these are for you to see, so you aren't being caught off guard with the public seeing.
So my only issue on the Mountain Ridge one is, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, and that's,
Right.
because right now it's going
That's
through
why
the
it's wrong, we
process.
just give you information. It's a long ways for approval.
But if you wanna see it, we can show it to you tonight. It may change since last public meeting, or last community meeting, so it may change as each time they've met with them. And so the planning commission, we've kind of updated and showed them, so we're thinking you guys should see it. And we can bring it back in 2 weeks
I
and just show it.
just have some pretty strong opinions about it. Feels like it's deviating from our general plan, and I have an issue with that.
Right,
So I
and
don't want it to get way down the road.
Yeah,
That's-
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
That's what we're hoping for you guys to see.
So you stomp on the brakes.
If it's time to, this is the time to do that. So we intended for everybody to be here. And so we were going to say, this is what they have seen, what do you guys want to see, and this could be good direction for the plan.
But everybody does.
Yeah, I agree.
We like to
But you
give
wanna
it to
see
you
it tonight, or?
as it's growing, and so we can make changes, so we can be on top of it. That's why it's just information. It's gonna be in certain
I'll
meetings.
say Steve Maddox said that he was gonna send me whatever updates after the community meeting, and I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, he's
We just
basically
got
done it
today.
since then, so.
So
You probably should do it tomorrow, like, so we can.
I'm okay if we push it.
Yeah, and I think Clint and Nicole both asked that those be postponed until they're here.
Don't want to have conversation, but if it's information, we can give them the same
I could have
information.
saved myself so much time preparing for this meeting. I can watch hours and hours of driving and all ready to go.
Well, your team has.
Could have at least procrastinated.
I went back
David,
up-
are you okay continuing those so far, just so I don't go too far ahead? We would.
I want to back up a little bit. Sue? 3.2, he's gonna bring that as a discussion here, council requested to bring it back to the discussion last meeting, Sherry was here, and you've listened to the minutes, Jared, so there's been a request to bring that back by, Clint, I think, and Nicole validated that too. So, we had Gordon's name on, but it really is, we wanna know how you feel about the program, what you want us to do, what information you want us to gather.
3.3.
And we can do a formal presentation in the future, but we just wanna know what is the direction.
I think we can discuss that one.
they felt like they wanted to be here, so
Okay.
Both
Oh, I
plan-
thought you were saying they wanted to bring it back.
both plan
they
and
do wanna
full
bring it back,
access
but
to
not,
me.
yeah, they just don't want it tonight, cause they really wanna be involved with that. You read the same emails I read, so.
Yeah.
Now going back down where we were,
Sorry, let me recap so far. So
Okay.
we will do 3.1, we
Yes.
will do 3.2,
Yes,
we will do 3.4,
yes,
and we will do 3.6.
yes,
Did you want us to see it? Yeah.
just like,
Okay. I, if you could, just to make sure, I think,
so we're heading down the right direction. And then 3.8, we're gonna give this information, so 3.7
continued,
continued, and then 3.8,
we might as well continue it, because we'll just redo it again in 2 weeks.
I understand that, but this is a hot item right now. I've had conversations with.
I was able to
council-
listen to the audio of the discussion last time, but I didn't see the.
Let's bring it today.
Yeah, this encroachment stuff, I was trying to figure out some of the compromise, and council was pretty firm and strong that if they encroach on our properties, and knowing that every council member wasn't there because this is gonna be very sensitive, if we go by the black and white of our ordinance, we're gonna start pulling people fences back and sheds and there's a lot of them, and it gets pretty painful, so I think you need to watch it, what we have, and then we need to probably table the direction, but we need to get you the information, how bad it's looking.
Okay, so it'll be presented.
I would like to present it, and then
Okay.
we'll probably.
And then we'll present it again next
When we
week.
get direction, 'cause I think with the mayor not being here to see it, and, there are two council members not seeing, that they'll get the packet, we'll make sure you get the information, so the next meeting we actually come back and get some direction,
Okay.
okay? Oh, boy, it's been a day, hasn't it? Discussion of ordinance, here again, the hunting one, we had a lot of discussion last time, and because we didn't have a full 5 year, it was split. There was no way we could get 3 votes to go one side or give directions to the camp. But this one, in reality, I'd like to continue it because we said, leave it as is for this year, we'll revisit it and have something in place by the time, season rolls around next year, so we'll bring it back through the winter. We can bring it back whenever we want, but I'm surprised it ended up being here already, because it's gonna be a discussion.
I don't mind saying for the record, I listened to
And
that
we're-
entire
and we're
discussion
very-
and I'm just fine allowing archery, I think.
Okay,
But leaving it as is, just so everyone understands.
mean, yeah,
because
so-
they can't hunt this year.
they can hunt up there, but
They
not
can't
on,
hunt on the city property,
right,
right?
that's
So
what it is.
So it says they can't, which I was supposed to, I thought they should be able to. That's why I asked for it to be on this agenda.
And the bottom line, to enforce that is difficult, we have to actually go out and sign all our properties, because you don't know what one property is to the next up there. There's still a lot of private property there that they can hunt on.
Right, and the problem will be enforcement for you, because people will not know it and they'll just go hunt on it.
I looked at the calls, we got one, we are getting a lot of calls right now, though, asking for a ton. So we're looking for some direction.
I'm in favor of allowing archery up there.
But
Me too.
we can allow it, but we need put something in place, because for our archery, you gotta say very
So
specific.
do we need
what
to
it is.
put this on a general?
Well, we just have to, right now, we have to issue a permit if we're going to say yes.
It was
Or we
always-
just turn a blind eye, because our ordinance says, if you're gonna hunt on city property, you need, so either ignore the ordinance and just say, yeah, go hunt, or we need some kind of a permit and process. That was the change in the ordinance.
I think we have a
discussion.
I don't think we have it, so,
We didn't agree, there was
Well,
nothing agreeable.
well,
It
there's
was-
the ordinance, I went back through the park ordinance with Wendy. And what the parks ordinance, basically the purpose of the archery was to not allow people to target shoot in parks, because we had incidents of that without a permit. So the ordinance, I don't think there's an ordinance in place now that doesn't allow people to.
So it's not, we're not in conflict of any of our current
It
ordinances.
doesn't need a permit then?
It doesn't need a
Okay.
permit. The intent of that in the ordinance, if I'm speaking incorrectly, Wendy, let me know, but.
I was gonna say, this got way more complicated than what I listened to literally last night, so
Sure
that's,
To
good,
not
this is
allow-
better.
It got very complicated even last time.
The parks ordinance, the intent was target shooting in parks.
So if we leave as is for this year, people could do as normal, it's not in conflict with
That's my
Our
understanding.
ordinance, not an enforcement issue.
So if they
If
call the
you
city.
wanna
they have to-
prohibit, rifles, you're gonna have to do something.
Yeah, we need to do something.
Because as it stands right now, somebody goes up there and shoots in the open unit.
Let's bring it back.
That's
Everybody
2
back
weeks.
when it's needed. Let's bring it back.
I have
Okay.
a small presentation
Let's
tonight if you wanna hear it. That's what this was on for.
And we're starting to get calls because the hunt's going to open, so it might be a little higher
I think it's
priority.
I think this is gonna be one that everybody needs to hear, so let's just wait till everybody's here.
So in 2 weeks, we can hear it and
Okay, we'll
then.
bring it back.
When is the,
But let's bring it back. I mean,
October
Starts
starting,
September 3rd.
We'll bring it back right away so you got something for the rifle hunt.
it starts September 13th.
and ends in November.
It's been complicated, and last time, literally, there was no defining
Yeah, 2
direction.
Sure.
And so that, we need all 5 in a room.
We'll probably need something, just as I was walking up here tonight, two of the sergeants said, we're starting to get hammered with calls, people wanting, where
so
can they hunt?
is muzzle open or whatever on 13?
The muzzleloader doesn't open until the 20.
I'm just thinking it's later, isn't it?
Yeah, and the rifle.
I don't do any of that hard stuff.
The
so I
rifle
don't
hunts
know.
don't either, so just the extended archery.
Well, they can hunt, so they can, currently they can hunt any hunt that's in season,
Right, but there's no rifle hunt in season
not until October.
in our
I was
area.
gonna say rifle,
It's
yeah, what
October.
I'd be concerned about the dates.
Right,
It's October.
I think the Muzzy is the 25th.
25th open,
Yeah.
25th.
Wednesday, the
Well,
25th.
Day of, but that's the day of our next meeting.
And we can get something out before then, we'll bring something back, but here again, it was, we kinda have a feeling where it's gonna go, we have all 5 in your room, but we don't know for absolute sure how.
And we
that
need all
ordinance
5 in
is
the
at.
room.
sounds
So
good.
let's put it on the 25th agenda.
Okay.
David? David? Thank you.
And on the city manager updates, because we're gonna have some time, we're gonna have time, cause it was pretty loaded up.
You can decide what you wanna.
We have some stuff to fill in, we want to talk about some stuff from Jordan Valley and some other things that's going on there. I need some direction.
Okay.
But you get your information to you and then here's what I need to do for you.
Okay.
Okay?
So Jackie, what do you need from us officially as we review the agenda? One motion or we do each one at a time?
No, I can just put that we continue them to a
Okay.
future meeting. We don't need to do anything.
Alright, so go back to the beginning, 3.1.
Wait, future, wait, let me add one more thing for future.
Oh, sorry, yeah, future
Tree-
agenda items. I have
Trees in Park Street, apparently we're starting to enforce that. I've been having some calls of upset people about that.
Park strips, trees and park strips.
And my concern is if we're going to be changing what's planted, how heavy-handed are we on our enforcement right now for trees in Park Strip if we're changing what kind of trees we want allowed in Park? I'm confused.
We have not been very heavy-handed at all. When it was pulling up our curb and gutter sidewalk, we go in there and pull those trees out
Okay.
right away.
So
I
our enforcement activity was in response to a complaint.
Yep.
And in order, so that's why that one street
What was the
received.
complaint? It wasn't the tree that they liked or that there
There
was?
wasn't
No,
trees.
the trees, yeah, somebody was actively working on the park strip and there was no trees in place. Somebody complained about not having any trees there.
Had the type of trees.
They wanted trees in there.
Yeah.
We're changing the type of trees.
Because some trees
Are
bring
we,
up some
the
bugs.
part that caught my attention is, are we forcing people to take trees out?
No,
No, but we're telling them they have to plant trees, and,
Yes.
but we're updating what trees they should plant,
I
so.
know,
it's
it's
like-
all-
I'll say
I saw
this,
that.
if they're in a park strip, which the city owns, and they're pushing up the curb and gutter sidewalk,
Then,
we'll work with them. and
Oh,
do
that makes sense.
Cause that's a problem, or a site problem.
yeah, they definitely don't want us going down the street saying, that's not the right kind, we make them rip it out.
No, we're not doing that.
Right?
But then my question was.
Yeah.
How heavy should we be enforcing that right now if we're changing out the kind of trees?
I've not been hearing specifics on changing the trees. It's more what's being planted in between the trees is what South
And
Valley.
Michael, Sherry had an email from a resident concerned about the flowering pair, the Shancher
Yeah,
and
that-
Bradford.
Yeah.
The bug they bring, the fire bug they bring in, it's killing our trees, it's killing more there.
I'll plead ignorance on this one, I had no idea that we had an approved list.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
Most cities do.
Because they do
Yeah.
damage to your road, your curb gutter, your sidewalk.
Are we changing the list?
I think we wanted to expand it or
And
maybe prohibit
eliminate
some,
some.
yeah.
So that's the only concern, is
So-
like, oh,
Standards is actually already working on it, Wendy is working on it with her team about what trees we're gonna be some adjustments. Even though those trees are on our list, we're not letting them, the new ones go in, that type, she's enforcing that right now, anything new, she's not allowed that.
so just let them know that they can call the city for kind of an updated ones that we,
The ones that we'll
we're
verbally
gonna-
approve right now, and I think it's a good way to go, Heidi's been exceptional. I'm looking at Wendy, cause she knows really all the detail, so if I don't say it correctly, she'll correct me, but, yeah, that's kind of what our message we want developers, when they do these landscapes, that they go with this list.
okay,
And 20 years ago, we didn't have these problems with the firebug, particularly in the flowering pear, non-bearing fruit trees, and now we are. And so, that'll be a good, great discussion, I'll become arborists after that.
So what happens right now when a landscaping plan comes in, if they have those trees in it that were not recommended for continuation in the new standard, Heidi makes recommendations to them, explaining why we're not using those trees anymore, makes a recommendation for a different variety.
perfect, okay, thank you.
Yes.
And if they install them the wrong way during construction, we will have to tear them out.
If you brought a plan, and you told them, that makes sense. But if you're Joe Schmo like me,
How
did
soon
my
you
own
want that
and
coming
dug a hole
out?
and put a tree on it, yeah.
How soon would you like to hear that?
Oh,
Because we're already pushing a lot of things to the next meeting.
no, I think it's a few months away, though, even
Yeah.
for your thing,
A
I just
standard
wanted to make
update.
sure.
Jonathan was here,
He's
he
got his office.
disappeared. They're about 4 to 6 months
Yeah.
out from getting those.
So I think it's fine, I just wanted to make sure we weren't going down this other road when we're still trying to
It's
change
already
what
on
people are trying to do.
engineering and Wendy's group target, but now it's on Jacqueline, she won't let that go until we put on the agenda sometime.
Okay, perfect,
We have our J meetings every week, she's making sure we're on the list every week, so.
thank you. I'm good.
Other future, future agenda, I have two things to touch on real quick, is Chamber of Commerce, I'd like us to have a discussion regarding Chamber of Commerce, the new South Valley Chamber. We have them come in and give their presentation. Greg Summerhays reached out to me several weeks back, and kind of explained to me kind of what they're trying to accomplish, et cetera. Apparently Sandy Draper and Riverton have signed on and they're talking to the others, so I think we need to have them just come give their presentation.
So have an update on Chamber of Commerce.
Have the presentation.
For South
Okay.
Valley.
You want that done by Summer Hayes, you want someone,
Well, we just invite them.
okay? Like your other item?
The other was the reviewing the previous meeting. I don't know if you have it slated for city manager updates or if it's gonna be on for September 25th, but the board assignments for next year. I would be really uncomfortable with us having a serious discussion that ended in recommendations prior to the new council being in place. We're gonna have a new council member and I think we should at least wait until the election, November 9th was mentioned, that day would be a good day to do it. We should know who the person is by then and invite them to be, that's a good training experience too. I'll say, when I first came in, I tried to do my homework and I talked to existing council members and asked them every question I thought I could ask, and that never came up. I know, again, I'll plead ignorance. I had no idea that there were that many extra assignments, right, coming in.
There's none.
There, yeah, and I found that I
We have a
spend
whole
almost
spreadsheet for it.
more time doing that than things I should be. So I'd be really hesitant. I'll just use, for example, if I'm asked to do anything else that's a change from what we're doing, I'll say I'll consider it when the new council is in. I mean, if we want to have, in case of, I know Nicole brought up UFA in particular, if we need to have some council members go to meetings and be there to get up to speed and know what's going on, we can be there, but to have an official handover
That's kind of
before new members, and I just don't think it's quite.
That's kind of where she's really been. She's actually been talking about it for months. She's been, I know this for a fact, because I had seen it go up on the calendar. Sometimes I get invited. She meets with Chief Peterson quite frequently to understand all the dynamics that's going on. You fight fire service area and you fight fire. But she wanted to make sure whoever it is has enough time, then questions, I'm sure she did call after she got office too, but really kind of just sit there and listen, get up to speed on their finance and the whole structure, so they're not going in blind January, first January meeting. And I think, I was directed at the last meeting, we had a lot of dialogue, and sometimes I was directed to bring back the 25th, have a discussion about it and talk about some governance. But that's still here again, we're always looking for that 3 nod from all 3 of you, or hopefully all 5 of you, to bring something.
And I'll maybe clarify, I'm okay having like a general discussion and maybe specific issues like that, but as far as identifying someone to take a spot, or, to me, it's
Not
putting the
sure
cart
it was that, I think it
before.
was just general discussion and
Well, it
maybe.
was saying that we were gonna identify the person and go in and do an official welcoming and handoff before, the end of the year, and I personally, I'm not comfortable with that.
And I don't think, I've never, that meeting, we talked, is all discussion, and the November 9th, strategy work meeting we're gonna have was all gonna be discussion, not decision making. So if council said, okay, 1st December, we're gonna make that decision, or we're going to January, that's still all in you. We're just trying to educate you what we're asked to do.
Yeah, I don't, definitely when we came in, that was kind of the first meeting, we sat down and there was a chart with a list of responsibilities, and then we divvied it out and trying to figure out who could best serve in those. So it would only be fair that whoever is elected is part of that conversation for sure.
And that's why I was looking at the November meeting in reality,
Yeah.
because we'll have the unofficial results by that time, but we won't have it. The canvassers meeting will not be happening, but at least allows them to come and participate and listen and start to get some idea where we're going with this next year.
So I guess maybe my suggestion is that maybe change the date from the 25th to the 9th, so at least have that part, have that discussion with that person there.
Especially because if we're bumping a lot of this to the next meeting too, it's gonna be tough anyway.
This, I have anxiety for like a day and a half. You don't let me sleep much because I worry about, because as you all know, we don't do really anything until you get some correction.
Right.
And when we miss these work meetings, we're gonna nod to do something, but if it's something past ordinance, that takes several work meetings before it goes for you, for a general meeting to vote on, before we can actually start acting on it. So, anytime we kick off or push off, like today's been,
Well, it's tough to catch up. I
there's our ability to be.
talking to somebody earlier today, as I've spent the last 5 days trying to catch up on one night's meeting.
Yeah.
So,
So you're right, it's gonna get very heavy for the next meeting to do that.
so those are the only 2 I had. David, do you have anything for future agenda? Alright, let's move on officially to 3.1, Chris.
Sounds good. We appreciate it. Obviously, this is the first time the planning commission has been invited to talk with you guys, so this may change shape of what we end up doing in the future. But at least for this one, we wanted to talk about some of the agenda items from the last meeting that we had as the planning commission. In particular, there were 3, which we had some different concerns with it. Well, 2 of them, and then one of them, which I'll just let you know, Game Point. Aaron Osman has been great to work with, very accommodating. He wants to have a great product in the city. We have seen no reason not to think this. When they come with a lot of changes, based off of recommendations or thoughts that, and a lot of times it's stuff that they just didn't think about yet. And so working with them and what we've seen from them has been very good, and I'm hoping that you guys are seeing the same thing. But their product that they've at least shown to us so far has been very good.
Can I ask a question on that one? Again, following up from the last meeting, this is more, it was discussed in council work meeting, but the change of the word from restaurant to just general food, what's the intention behind that?
I think in our ordinance, we could call it food, so it could be like a coffee shop, it could be anything that sells food kind of thing. So food prepared. So it can sell it, take off-site, eat on-site, deliver, anything like that. So basically, it could be, restaurant's a little narrow, but it's just opens up to any kind of prepared food.
They've continued to state that they want a full sit-down restaurant.
They're talking about the
Yeah.
separate building.
Okay, Yeah, and there'll be
Other
multiple
law.
tenants, I think, at that location on the corner.
But that's again a food, some food
Yeah.
sales.
Did we change the language simply because it was more in harmony with the way our ordinance read?
So here's what we changed in the language was this. In the zoning, we were very specific in what they could use, food preparation. And so what happened is, we were now putting in the development agreement, food preparation. So let's say they came in with something, well, I'll make up something, let's say it was something really cool, don't know what it is, but it's not food preparation. Now we have to go change the development agreement and the zone. The zone is really what's strong. This development agreement goes away, I think in 5-6 years it disappears. But what's strong is the zone. And so if all of a sudden they want to come in and change something to laser tags 2.1, now they can't do it, but they could come to you and say, we have this new game thing we want to do. You guys say, yeah, now we have to change the development agreement and the zone. Now, the way we change it is you don't have to change the zone. So it still comes through the planning commission's recommendation to you. Now they can't do any of those things. They only do food, sales, preparation kind of thing, restaurant.
So the reason I asked it now with you is, that's going best case scenario, there's something cool that they want, what is conceivably the worst case scenario?
From everything we're seeing, there's a restaurant and there's gonna be food that's brought down to the bowling alley.
Well, if the restaurant doesn't work and they wanna do something else there, we change the wording in the development agreement to just general food to match the zone.
You're talking on the other lot though,
The
not
other
on,
lot,
not
small,
on.
this is the
not-
Yeah, the
small
corner one,
The
the
corner.
corner one is the one they're referencing, I think.
Right, and that's what I'm concerned about, is that, okay, we'll go up to this point, we're envisioning an actual sit-down restaurant. If it's being requested to change it to something else to allow quote flexibility.
It could be a
on
donut
marketing,
shop now.
Your
Bakery,
flexibility has
donut
uncertainty.
shop, it could be any.
What's the worst thing?
A really
And
bad
maybe,
bakery
Mike,
shop.
we might have a better idea of what the worst case scenario is with that, because from my perspective, it's probably like a
Fast
coffee
food.
shop or something, or fast food, yeah.
Yeah.
If they turn into McDonald's, that would be the worst.
So, you have to think, the big thing that
It's
they
good
want.
tax revenue.
I know, but I'm saying, that's what, they can only go in that direction. So,
They're very smelly.
no, I'm not against McDonald's, let me take that back. But what I'm suggesting is, we were probably thinking more of a, community things instead of a national brand something,
But I
so.
would think that even McDonald's would qualify as a
It
restaurant.
could.
But immediately where my mind went was, why at this late stage are they not wanting to do a restaurant?
No, so
The
let me
restaurant's
back
still
up.
in.
They are totally stuck, they cannot do anything but a food service restaurant there, period, unless they come back and rezone. The only thing we changed was that it didn't say in the development
Was this
agreement.
our catch or theirs?
I think we talked about, I can't tell you how that, so what we were saying is they came back with some ideas that maybe there's some more gaming opportunities in that second building. And we said, well, it's too late, we're too far down a path. But then they said, so the discussion came up, well, right now, if you come up with those ideas, then now we have to amend the zoning and the development agreement. Now we just have to amend the zoning. So they can't do anything different than that restaurant, period.
That makes sense mechanically.
So mechanically, it just saved a step. So if you guys want it, you still can have a two-step process if we change it back to the other wording. But the issue really boils down to, if you want it, why not just have it approved with the zoning? And the zoning goes forever, it never changes. Development agreements go away, so it's just a clunky thing to keep going, but.
I think also some of it is the control of what they want in there is based off of, and a good example is JC doesn't find the commercial lot next to it because they need more parking. So a lot of the thought process was having something that allows us to maximize our parking during our peak times. So there's a possibility they will wanna try to push a coffee shop if they don't have another, something like that, because their peak times are later in the day, it's not early in the morning. And so, that's some of the things that tends to come back to us when they see it being very successful. If they feel like they have to add things to draw more people, then they may come back in that two-step process that he's talking about, saying, now we're adding another laser tag or another option of something else to draw more people in so we get more success.
But part of this is gonna come, they're gonna see who's coming, where mom may drop them off here, and then maybe want to sit across in their little, whatever they create over here. Maybe it's a coffee shop or a tea shop or something where they don't have to be with the noise and the lights. So they're looking to see what they can play off with their building. But right now, it's a food, beverage, drink preparation thing, that's what it has to be.
Just think worst case scenarios, it's not that I don't trust anyone.
I don't know what a worst
It's
case
that I
food
don't
shop
trust
is.
anyone in the future.
Well,
Because in the future, all that matters is what's in the agreement, and whether we like it or not, or whether what we were told was intended, that's the wording, and there's not
I
a
just-
dang thing we can do.
I think we have to keep this in mind a little bit. They don't wanna compete against their own restaurants. So something that's going in there will probably be something that is not directly competing with them. If it's a restaurant that's a little bit different than them, or something that's more fast food.
What's
made
to
and
prevent
come
them from
back.
selling that piece off and somebody else puts in?
It's zoned, they have to do a restaurant, so
Yeah.
they were initially thinking of a coffee shop or bakery kind of thing, which is different, but again, they don't know what's gonna go there, but they have to do
Exactly,
the
think worst
zone.
case scenario, they sell it to somebody else.
But we
What's
already have that
worse than
control with the
that?
zone, they couldn't do anything more than that without changing the
Either
zone.
way, it has to be some sort of food
So
establishment.
if you don't wanna see a bakery shop or a coffee shop there, when it comes to you, specify that. Cause
You
this
could-
is coming
it's,
to the
it's like putting a
development.
ZZ on there, right? A
Yeah, the
conditional
ZC
zoning.
is right now, they can only do a restaurant type thing,
And
that's
so
all
we
they
can
can
put
do.
some limitations on what type
The zone has that
Could do
ZC
that.
on it already.
as well. At this point, we could though add something.
If you
Or
wanna
a
add
certain
more,
type.
say, strip out coffee shop, strip out bakery, I think those things are not bad for that, I think those would be okay, when you say worst case scenario, those, in my mind, are still great there. I'd still wanna support that if that's what they came back with, so
Especially getting in between the residential, getting to the Mountain View.
if they wanna do donut shop, or if they wanna do, those are the things that they could do, they can't do anything other than that, that's all they can do with the zone. The development agreement is just saying they have to follow the zone says that. So, I don't know anything else they can do than those kind of food things. So they may not do a full set down restaurant, cloth napkins, but they could do any fast food, casual fast, really fast like donut shop or drink, the drive-through, they could do a Sodalicious with cookies. They have the right to do that with the current zone. I don't think that's a worst case, I think that's fine. I don't know, unless the planning commission sees
You guys see any problems, I'm just going back to just general game point, I mean, it's come along, it's a lot better than the first version that I know we saw. What do you guys think at this point?
So far with what we've seen, we think it'll be nice for the community. It's got a lot of buzz, it's got a lot of good response to it, and when we see it personally, it looks like something that would be good for the city. So, it will have, some special, recommendations or differences on some of the product that we see, because they are coming back to us, and you'll see the images later. I
we'll
think.
show them the images
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah, it's
They
a little
haven't
bit
seen it.
different, and it's not the stone, it's more of a glass look, I mean, it's gonna be neat. So, it's a neat product.
I think they've tried to listen to the planning commission, they're still coming back with some changes that they've asked to do, and so they'll see updates, so you're even seeing something that's out of date. But we wanted to prepare you just to start seeing this stuff, and I think you're gonna be impressed, so I think you're gonna be,
But you know, I mean, devil's in the details,
It
the
is.
changes in wording.
I believe there will still be changes that come through too.
Well, it should be.
So, so the next two items, and I'll go through them in the order, is Harriman Town Center. There were two parts to it that we talked about in our last meeting. So as we went through it, obviously, as a planning commission, we look at the design guidelines. And does this actually meet the design guidelines that were actually put through on the initial development and the master development agreement and when they put everything together? And so there's the mixed use portion with the commercial along the bottom that's on the east and west side. As we went through that, and I'm just gonna read some of these, and obviously the images will talk for them, as you look at it more. I'm gonna read some of the different things that we noticed, or the building's designed to frame the streets. Some of what we looked at is, you have the buildings that are facing inward, but we're looking at it as a pedestrian walking way, and so there's streets on the sides as well. So, are the shops located on the sides? Is there entryways? Is it framed in the entirety? And a great example is the 2008, when initially they were talking about Harriman Town Center, they did a nice article and has a nice image of it all. And you'll see a really good idea of how it frames here. You see how it frames on corners and how it goes around. that's one of the things that we felt like was sort of missing, and when it came through, that was really clear in the design guidelines. And so that was one of the things we talked about with them. As well, it characterized by larger buildings and tower elements, which are the corners. It also talks about defining urban open space with pedestrian amenities. The edges of the courtyards and plazas should contain storefronts, restaurants, and or offices. Blank walls and dead spaces without pedestrian interest shall be minimized. These are all out of their design guidelines, and we felt like it was missing some of those components. And then, are we creating a series of small plazas and squares designed to attract a greater number of retail vendors and associated rents as opposed to a few larger scale plazas? So one of the things that we noticed is it has a good design. It does. It's just missing some of the items in the design guideline that we feel like completes it. And so that was a lot of what we looked at. Adequate walking. I mean, if we're walking somewhere and we walk on the side of this building, it's not as inviting as when we walk in the back or the front. Well, if parking's in the back, as soon as they start walking around the sides, we wanted to have a feel of this is a completed area. It's completed town center, everything's there. And that also comes with some of the patio designs and some of the overall designs of courtyards and plazas and the building pass-throughs that go through the middle, having a different feel to them to where they're more inviting. And those may even be areas where some of these restaurants or other shops set up some tables, and as they pass through, it's a nice area for the community to actually sit and hang out. And so those were a lot of the things that we noticed, and we talked about the corner elements. In 19 through 21 in these design guidelines, it talks about a lot of the arcades, pillars, columns, colonnades, trellis structure, and portals, which we felt like were missing. So at least in our last meeting, these were a lot of the items with that center point that we talked about, and asked them to come back and have a more complete picture of having this done. Now on the residential portion, which is on the north side and sort of in circles around it, a couple of the items that we noticed that were missing. So they have, I think there's 8 units, 4 on each side, on the east and west. So there were 8 units facing inward, and these are residential. A couple of items that we started talking about was the live, work, play units. So actually making it similar to, if you guys have been up in Rosecrest, there's a little clubhouse, and across from it is the live, work, play units. So they actually have their commercial entity on bottom. Shareology, I think there's like maybe a real estate agent or insurance or something like that. There's, I think, 4 of them. I think there's 4 of them. And actually encircling the entire area of Harriman Town Center with these businesses. Some of them smaller that are more at-home style, but also give them the option of those. Maybe there's someone who's only gonna have 1 or 2 chairs and wants to be a barber and have it on the bottom floor of it. Just give different options to have this feel. And so that was one of the things we talked to them about. We also talked about missing the towers or the corner feel as well. They came in, it was beautiful, to where when you come in, they had a huge chunk of the corner with landscaped and a couple benches, and it was just an open green area almost. Well, as we looked at the design guidelines, we wanted to more strictly adhere to them, which gives it the idea of sort of framing it in and causing it to where the building actually circles it more. And as we do that, it takes that little corner that, let's be honest, if we have a beautiful park here, how many people are gonna stop and hang out in this little corner?
That corner.
And so we're making it to where it's more framed out with the building circling it, which will also give it a very unique feel with the corner of the structure. It'll have a completely different feel to other areas, because how often do you see someone who builds around the corner in that way? And so it'll allow a little bit. Now, one of the things in the residential that we talked about, and we're trying to understand how we want to do this, is it talks about traditional and conventional standards. Well, we have the entire inner circle where it's designed more on traditional, and the conventionals behind it. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah.
And so there's a whole different, now, is this something that we're okay with? We felt like it was, even though it makes a different design and a different feel, we thought it was okay, but at the same time, we also want to see the corner feel of even the traditional, to where maybe the homes on the inside, as you're walking around, the homes on the corner actually have a wraparound porch more. So it doesn't look like, okay, as we're walking in this area, yeah, this is a side we don't wanna walk on, it doesn't have as inviting a feel. And I think that's a lot of what the design guidelines were leaning towards as we did this. They were actually very well written, and it's actually nice as the planning commission to have something like that to where we can say, okay, there's some components we feel like are missing. We know we can't have all of them, because if we
So
did
it's
have all of
actually a
them.
case of us wanting the developer to.
Exactly. If we actually went through all of them, there was a lot more. There's a ton of standard zones, and it would be impossible for them to adhere to all of them, because some of them almost contradict each other. But they're still missing too many, we felt. Another thing that it talked about a lot, and I think it's something that has to be accommodated for, especially with a lot of the issues that we see over here in the other part of the Harriman Town Center with the homes, is the parking on the streets. A lot of these driveways and garages are short, which means a lot of the big vehicles will be parking on the street, whether they like it or not. I know as the builder and developer, they'd like to say, well, we have all the parking we're required. Well, in these design guidelines, one of the things that they mention is informal internal parking courts. Are there parking lots internally shielded from the roadway or externally buffered by trees? And they call these parking courts. And that was 3 through 5 talks about some of this in there. Well, these actually, I think it was a max of 16 parking stalls and sort of situated in different areas throughout it. Well, as we move the corner to where some of the housing is there, it should open up some space potentially. Now, it's not an ideal scenario for how much work the builder's done in establishing their guidelines or their homes and everything else, but I think it answers a lot of our problems in our community by 16 stalls here, 16 stalls here. It takes a lot of the larger vehicles off of the actual parking in front of homes. I just drove through here and took pictures. There wasn't a street that didn't have more than 10 cars parked on it, and it wasn't even 5 o'clock yet.
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem, I think this was brought up there too, was that they get to include their driveway as a parking spot, so that adds to the total,
We mentioned,
right?
yeah, the
That-
driveway. That was what you mentioned, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's, and so that creates a mess, because how many people do you know that really stack, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because usually if somebody's in the garage, whoever pulls in behind them, the person in the garage has to leave earlier than the person behind can park on the street.
And a lot, like I said, a lot of them are really short. I know a couple of years back, we went and changed those in ordinance and whatnot and made them longer, but those are for new ones from that time.
Yeah.
Those that have been approved in these development agreements in 2007,
You're looking at 18 to
2010.
20 feet on most of
Yeah.
these requirements.
Yeah.
And most of the larger SUVs, trucks, they're 22 to 24
I
feet.
say we changed it to 24 if I remember correctly,
I think
but
that's-
that's only from what,
The short
Really
of
2017 on.
GMC is about 21, long way is.
Yeah.
And what's hard to explain to people is that these development agreements grandfather them under the old rules and they can still put this.
So that's a lot of what we're asking from these developers for the Harriman Town Center to come back with a solution to this. That these all are in the design guidelines. They came with some really nice little parks actually through that back portion that had more of the patio feel. The parks were by any and all means nice. It was just lacking in some of the solutions for some of the other things. And I don't think we asked anything unreasonable. I mean, if we really wanted to, we could have dove in and asked for a lot more because there are so many different guidelines within this. But I think this will sort of finish and make the product really nice for them. And so that's the Harriman Town Center, at least what we went through. The last one is the Mountain Ridge. And
I have
Oh,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing, sorry, one more note, and Brett sent me this too, but, some of the people that were there in front of me, they were concerned because they live right here, and they were concerned that the conversation about that fence was never had, because they are required to do a precast along there.
The retail on this corner,
Oh, yeah, so when
it's
we,
the only retail corner, this other side's different, it backs up against our road. There's no road between the houses and this retail center on the west side of that. And so we gave a proposal to Michael, and he's our push, I think Matt wants, I'm not sure, but
Yeah, we just
that
need to
needs to be
require
a
detail.
precast fence
Just-
along there.
just wanted to
So,
bring
so
that
I
up
don't
so
know the master
everybody
development
knows.
agreement on that. I know our ordinances now require in between different zones,
Right.
a precast wall, so that may be something that the city staff can look up to help educate us on.
When I read
Exactly.
the MDA on that piece of it, it was a little flexible on it.
Okay.
Or what, just make a decision, and we know that vinyl fences don't do well against retail, unless they're gonna be 20
No, absolutely.
years. they just don't hold up.
Anyway, there was some concern about with those residents,
Sure.
the fact that retail, so. Anyway,
And also, I
if you
don't
all
think,
just keep
that's
that in
where a
mind.
lot of the parking will go as well.
Right,
I
and
don't
she's
think they
like-
want that right behind their house
Yeah, she's
without
like,
some
all these
protection of
people
people
walking
potentially
through.
walking through.
Yeah.
The only thing we need to keep in mind, and we may have to look at that area, is, because we wanna keep it walkable, is where will we have the pass-throughs?
Right,
And so that is one area that we'll have to look at, which I don't think it talked about much on that one.
so anyway, that was, they were definitely very concerned about that, 'cause she actually.
Because I don't think it was
like
brought
this
up
house
at
right
all
here.
in our last meeting, Michael.
And
They
they, and
didn't
they
talk
haven't
about
addressed
all,
it.
because that's gonna
Yeah.
come in the next phase, the retail piece.
Yeah.
I'm glad that people are thinking about it already and we wanna be on top of it, so.
Well, just one last thing on town center, because it's been, I've heard comments in both council meeting and planning commission now, and seen stuff on Facebook even from our area's school district board member, in saying flat out that this particular thing was not approved before the recent boundary changes for the school district, et cetera, and we can't do this sort of thing. Residents have said we can't be changing zoning for these things that reference this in particular. To my knowledge, nothing's been changed. This was approved when?
Well, we started writing an agreement back in 708.
And say 07 to 09.
You know, approved it in 9, 10, somewhere in there.
And this won't come to the council, this is not a change of any kind, this is what the planning commission's for, here's what the guidelines are. If it meets these things, then they build it, it doesn't
Yeah,
come
the
here.
developer's actually been working, I believe, very kind, because this is pretty much ready to go, and planning and zoning saw this, 9 months ago, almost 10 months ago. And my direction the council gave me, we started asking about coming to meet with us. And it's come a long ways, and Chris is factually correct, it's come a long way, it's getting there. Just a few kind of fine components, I think we're very happy with how it frames what we're trying to accomplish at Town Center. So they're doing a good job.
Yeah, I was
Easy,
impressed.
I think it's doing.
And you got one of the developers behind you that's been listening and making adjustments and.
He even stayed till the end of the meeting almost. So, and then the last one is Mountain Ridge. So, obviously that was continued and it would just be a recommendation to you as a city council. But as we looked at it, so right now, the general plan is saying this is commercial residential. And if I remember correctly, there's a small portion of it, Michael, that is actually in an MDA already in place, a small portion of it.
Yeah, there is a portion.
So there is a small portion of it that's already in existing MDA.
And the other is low density residential and single family
Yes,
residential.
so the zoning is A1, and, the city staff was gonna verify if that was low density or single
I
family.
looked it up.
But it is, okay. And so we're looking at that. So we, for a long time, we know we have strength in, does this abide by our general plan? Does this abide by our zoning? And then the only time that's sort of taken away from us is when there's an MDA in place.
Right.
And so our big question, and it was really to the city staff, is where are we lacking in inventory? If you tell us that we're lacking in inventory in these type of units that are wanting to be put in here, then we'll say, great, let's recommend this to the city council. Now, based off of what we've seen come through for the last 5 years, for me, we're not lacking in the higher density residential right now. And when I say higher density, I'm saying from townhome to higher density. What we're lacking in is places for those that are living in townhomes or condos or apartments that want a yard and want a
They're ready to move to
resident
that next step.
to move to the next step. Something that's maybe in between a 0.18 to a 0.25. And the city staff was gonna actually poll the information so they can get counts on where we're at with different things and where the inventory is lacking. Now, the only request I have, and you guys will be able to get this probably a little faster than I can, is also having them pull what has already been approved but not currently pulled, the building permits or the, yeah, because there's a lot of inventory which hasn't been started.
Well,
And so
and
that
that's-
needs to be considered in this equation. when we
In
look at-
fact, Councilman Orange actually, had a dialogue with us this week, I went down and visited with Michael Malloy. And the map she was asking for was that, You know, what's already got agreements on it, what's already been zoned for, what's been platted, what's not been platted, what is actually still open for zoning and zoning change. And Michael said that's the exact map I wanna build for our general plan packet. So they're already on it, moving on it, so you'll get that as soon as it's complete, it'll be very accurate at the time, to give you a broad, that overall city vision of what we have inventory wise, lots are vacant, we're already encumbered, MBA on them, what's been platted, what's not been platted. So it'll be a very good information sheet for you to use.
Correct.
What do you think the timeframe is on that, Michael?
I think we'll probably have it next week. I
So we
was
can pull
talking
that
with
in GI.
Eric about it today.
That's a little bit of work.
Oh, a lot of work, but I think it's so critical because so many of the comments you guys hear, I'm sure, because you guys are where everybody comes and screams.
Well, we plant the city, and you know that.
Exactly, but, I think so a lot of that, if we could just really help people understand more and more about that, when they start seeing things go up and they're like, you said no more of this, and it's like, that's been planned for 10 years. You know, it's just to be able to push that out via Tammy's network and stuff, just pushing that out, saying, take a look.
And some of our perspective in looking in this was the thought process of a long term, because it is correct. We're not gonna get a lot of commercial there in the sense of restaurants and other things. It's across the street. But it doesn't mean in 5 years or 10 years, we don't have a huge business center that's located there. And right now with half of the already zoned commercial, being owned by the school district, we don't have any say on that if they build a school. We have no control of that commercial right there, is
But
what it feels
there's
like.
another chunk of it that's
And that's the
school
chunk
doesn't
in
own,
what we're
right?
talking about.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought,
And so
there's
really
more
what
that
we're doing is
happens.
we're taking the commercial that we have control over and more so right now, and we're changing it to residential, and then the commercial we have less control over, we're leaving it up to whatever may happen. And so that's a lot of where our thought process has been on at least this area. Again, it's not about development, but is it what our city needs? And that's the question.
Let me take the opportunity to plant the seed here and just state one of the issues I have where I said it's time to kind of stomp on the brakes. To me, this kind of comes down to two things. Is there, when we have some things in place and you're asking for it to be changed, to me, there's kind of two fundamental questions. One, is there some sort of problem we're trying to solve, or is there something we're trying to achieve? Do we need to balance things out, whatever? And if that's the case, then the threshold is to convince me that this is the best way to address that problem or issue. I haven't really heard any of that with this so far. Stormwater was mentioned, but we've yet to see an actual plan or the other options that we could ask for to consider those options. It's just, here's this, and we haven't really gotten into any of that. If it's not that we're trying to solve a problem or achieve something in particular, it's just an ask that we want more, then that answer's gonna be pretty easy for me.
Yeah, so that was the items that we at least addressed at this point, and so, some of the other stuff, just to throw out there while I'm here, is, some of the concerns with, the subdivisions or areas that have been built a certain way, let's say they're 1 acres, but are in zones that can now allow for every one of those to be flag lots. How do we protect that, and how do we keep the feel of what those neighborhoods and what the community in certain areas is? And then maybe tightening up on the general plan and changing some zoning, which would be a pretty extensive process if we were to do that in a lot of these areas. And so that has been a little bit of a concern, since we randomly see these one lots coming in and everything else, the question is what are our intentions for the city long term? Because if it is to leave some areas that are larger, that maybe half acres, 1 acre, 1.5 acres in certain areas, or however we intend for it to be, we need to put something in place to protect that, because right now, there's enough different zones where there is no protection.
I'll be the devil's advocate on that one too, because I understand 100% your thing, but there's just for my own personal aspect of it, there's an unintended consequence of that too, because I'm in a situation like that to where now that I have 2.5 acres, and it's like, that's all you ever get to do, and you're surrounded by houses, right?
Yeah.
So so that it devalues my property because I can't utilize an extra acre, right? So, and I'm not the only one in that situation, I have many neighbors who are in the same type of situation, cause we dump out onto a larger street or something because they live flat lot. So I think we have to be really careful with that, because there will be people on the flip of that you'll definitely financially damage by that. And I mean, I'm not, and they could still be large lots, I could still have 2 1-acre lots, right? But I can't right now because of the flag lot.
And I think our concerns more are, and there was one neighborhood that's located relatively close to here, that there are half-acre lots, and it's a normal little cul-de-sac, and guess what? Every one of them could go behind their house.
Yeah, well, I totally understand that.
And I'm not saying everywhere, but I'm saying, is it our intentions as a city to keep integrity in some of these neighborhoods, or is it our intentions
sure.
to let them build how and where they want anyhow?
By using the word integrity, we're talking about structural integrity and the collective.
No, I understand,
So-
I understand
because I
100%
agree,
your
I agree.
concern.
I agree,
Just have to be careful.
someone with 2.5, 5 acres, but that's the question is, do we have it to where when a subdivision comes in and they're 1/3 acres, half acres, there's something a little bit different design, do we actually say, okay, now this is gonna be zoned this way? Now they have to come through to rezone it in order to change stuff,
Right.
and that's a real easy yes or no for the city. Well, if it's already zoned a certain way, they come through and it meets all the guidelines, we can't do anything.
Right.
And so, that's more of our concerns. We've had one property that's came in and has been changed 4 times. Just to
No, I
put more
hear you.
houses on it every single time.
No,
And
I
that's how
mean,
it is.
I get your concern about it, it's just figuring out the balance.
And that's why I open up to you guys to help out.
Hey, I think this has been very valuable, listening to this dialogue. So what was given direction on is to buy the chair back as organically needed, when items are coming up before him, to come to work meeting and give a.
I thought it was quarterly.
We talked about quarterly, but then there was that conversation, it's needed sooner, we need to allow
Oh,
it
yeah.
sooner, not wait till the quarter, because that would be fragmented
At
one
least.
day to move forward. So we'll just kind of monitor organically, otherwise we'll shoot for once a quarter, but I think from what you're hearing, I know what's on their plate, it's gonna be more frequent, until they can see some answers they
I
need.
think with the speed of growth, it may be more frequent if you guys want it to be.
Yeah.
We don't mind, we don't wanna take up this much time every time, but,
And it's important.
that
Me
should
too.
give you.
For
an
the
idea.
first go around,
Yeah.
I do have one other comment too. I was just, you can just tell your whole team, I was just super impressed when I was there the other night, just at the, I mean, I can listen to it, it was different to be there, but I was very impressed just at the thoroughness of going through things, throwing things out, you know, just considering all the issues that each development would have, so thank you for the thoroughness
Yeah,
you
we're
guys
missing
do.
one very thorough person that night.
But you guys did good.
oh, then I'll do.
It's good P and Z right now.
Yeah.
They're way good.
We've got some good teams. Alright, ready to move on?
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
3.2, Wendy?
You're not gonna do it for me? So, as you know, we've been working on our Parks Master Plan for the last year, and we're really pushing to try to get everything corrected, updated, because a lot has changed since we started it last August. So we've already added some areas. We know that there's some developments coming in that we need to plan for, and so a lot has changed over a year, and things are moving very quickly. And so, as such, we will be working with Landmark over the next month just to clean everything up. I've got a lot of notes in here that we need to clean up, either typos or inaccuracies or things that just need to be updated from August of last year. And so, tonight, I just want to get some of your thoughts as to where we're at and where we're going in the future, as we plan for the future level of service, where we want the city to be. So we've had this timeline and we've been working through it. We've had several open houses, we've had focus groups, we've had online interaction using Social Pinpoint and through the website. And so this is the big question. So Planning Commission did recommend approval of the draft at this point, 5-1. And the concern with the 1 down vote was that we are not including our private parks in the calculation. It's not normal to add private parks in that calculation, and on all of the Parks Master Plans that I've looked at, I haven't seen one that does add private parks to that level of service calculation for future level of service. So in discussing it, and we'll get to my recommendation in a little bit, I really want to hear what your thoughts are and when we did ran the calculations, there weren't a whole lot of private parks, in the city. I think that you think there's more than there really is. So right now, according to the plan where we're at 3.6 acres per 1,000 residents. That does not include private parks, that's purely public open parks. But on top of that, which is not included in our calculation, is about 43 acres of open space per 1,000. That's huge. But that also is not calculation that you would normally add into your park open space calculation. So differentiate park green space parks from open space native grasses. Those are those two differences. As we look into the next 10 years, which is what we're basing our future level of service on, our crystal ball, the city continues to grow in the way we anticipate it will, to 88,445 residents. If we completely stop park projects, our level of service drops to 2.1 acres per 1,000. Our open space also drops if we don't continue to purchase properties above what we already have under contract. So if we just stop with our contracted open space, we'll be at 28.79. But if we develop all the parks that we have in the plan, we actually go up to 4.5 acres per 1,000 residents. And so I think that that is the most important piece, because within 10 years, we anticipate that all of those parks will be installed and being used. So when I look at the 3.6 acres that is based on today, I feel really comfortable recommending the 4.5 acres per 1,000 residents, also taking into account the open space calculations. Any questions on that?
So when when you do your impact fee, you
Yes,
cannot, okay.
correct. So this is only for planning purposes, not for impact fee purposes. So that's a separate conversation. It will have Science Bank will come in and do their report.
Do you want us to make comments on whether or not you think you should include the private parks now or at the end?
At the end. So just to give you some idea of what we have surrounding us, this is their future level of service. This is not where they're currently at. So this is their goal, per se. So for example, South Jordan's at 4.8, but in the real world, they're at about 2.7. That does not include Daybreak. So Daybreak actually has about 12 acres per 1,000. But again, it's not included in their future level of service because they're private, not public. So this is where I want your direction and your discussion on if we want to include private parks and how we figure out how to go about that. In the staff report, I had mentioned that we've only been able to account for 10.25 acres in private parks, and some of that is park strips. So do we want to count park strips in our park level service? I don't think so. John's shaking his head no. So I'm gonna go with John. Do you just want us to indicate them in the plan as private parks, which are already indicated, and not count them in the level of services?
I don't
Any
count
other-
them in the level of services, they're private parks, it's like kind of like private backyards.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, I think they're private parks for a reason, and even if they make our numbers go up a little bit, it makes us feel better, it's artificial.
I do. 6 there today.
It's just a clean version.
On the private parks, I've been pretty consistent not to include them. They're private, they're not open to the whole city or against the whole city. Having said that, I want more private parks that they pay for and they maintain, and it offloads the pressure from the public ones, so.
Okay.
David?
Is there any other feedback from the plan that you were concerned about? Any other questions or concerns as far as the plan goes before we come back with the final?
Anything else, David? Alright, moving on, 3.4. Eyes on you.
Yay.
Okay,
I've been waiting for this.
I got some updates for you, so we'll just kind of step through. Again, show this where we're at. That's the wrong date, I forgot to update that, but that's today's date, September 11th, 2019. We're in ongoing negotiations, which,
It's the point we get to every time.
Success.
and I'll get through them, and it's getting more and more interesting every time we talk to them. So, as a reminder, we shrunk everything down, here's where we're at. And so, we'll start with our first parcel, and it's also our most difficult parcel, Stevens parcel. So, we got together with the engineering staff and Jory in the engineering department. He's had the most experience with going out and meeting with property owners and working through these negotiations. So we decided to assign Jory to this task. So when he called Mr. Stevens was upset that it wasn't me calling him. So we started off in the wrong foot. So I'll make sure we make I'm in the office or in the room when we make the call next time, so it can be there. He was demanding a few things. He threw out a price, which we can talk about a little bit later in our closed session about property acquisition. But he also said that he was still open to us rezoning his property. And we kind of closed the door on that several months ago. But he was not very willing to work with us at a reasonable price. So I can see this one going the route of condemnation and not working out the way we want.
That's why that process exists.
Yep. Item number 2, Perry parcel. He has a driveway. When this road was paved with the development to the north, half of the driveway was torn out and replaced. And he's a little unhappy with the way that work was done. It was done by a developer.
Looks pretty bad, huh? Yeah.
And it's got some slope issues. We'll have to tear into it anyway to put the sidewalk in. So he's requested that we give him an entirely new driveway in lieu of improvements in exchange for the right of way. So we were going to have to tear into it anyway. I was gonna cost estimate that and see where we're at. We haven't gotten a price on the rest of the driveway. But he already has curb gutter asphalt in front of his house. All we need to do is come in and do the sidewalk. So it's probably gonna be comparable to what a appraisal would cost anyway. So we're gonna be pretty darn close to where we need to be on this one. So I think we can work this one out, but that's our update. We're still working on negotiating through that.
Yeah, you have a hard time doing the sidewalk without going into his driveway a long ways.
Well, yeah, because his driveway goes up. We'll have to come into the sidewalk and then catch grade. So we'll have to go back in a ways.
Yeah.
And that was part of our original design. But we were gonna catch somewhere up near the back of that
It
car.
should be negligible, at least in my mind, and not an issue.
We just have to make sure there's not scope creep, and that a driveway turns into a sidewalk or a street light and this. So we'll keep working with them on that. Next one is the Newton parcel. This is on the north side of the road. If you look at this 135 feet we need, 123 feet we're gonna give back, that's a 12-foot acquisition, 12 square foot acquisition. Should be real easy, but he's asking in exchange for a secondary water connection at no charge. The interesting thing is, there's no secondary water. There won't be for, I don't know how long. It's not on our budgeted projects, so.
If it were there, we could just open up the pipe for him, sure.
So Justin said he'd love to stub a pipe with
So this
nothing in it.
123 feet, is that the existing, he owns that, and we don't have a prescriptive easement?
This is what he owns, or we own, that we would release back to him. Because we don't need it anymore, it's behind the sidewalk.
Okay.
This is what he owns that we would need, it's a little shape
Because
over
we were
there.
actually in arbitration with the ombudsman with him.
This is Michael Newton.
Oh, different.
Yep.
Okay.
This is Michael Newton. So, you've never heard of this property before because we've had a couple of times where he said, yeah, I'll sign, bring the papers out.
Yeah.
And then we get there and he comes up with something, so.
See, I'll tell you.
I know.
So we'll continue to work with him.
That's
Um,
take lead up.
He's really easy to work with. Just, until you get the papers right in front of him. we never know what's gonna happen. That's why these things take time. So, what's next? We'll continue to clear the right of way, and if we have to go through a condemnation process, we have John plugged in on that. We'll keep working towards that.
Everyone else is good though, right?
Everyone else is signed.
I will say, Sherry, that we're farther along as far as that goes, but.
I'm gonna have to take my white flags as the neighbors and stuff.
So in order to clear the right of way, if we want to enforce the ordinance that was passed a few weeks ago, we have to come back to you with a resolution. And there's a couple of things. In the ordinance, it talked about undeveloped or underdeveloped land or undeveloped land. So these parcels would all be considered underdeveloped land because they're on parcels that haven't been split up in a subdivision or whatnot. So the ordinance also says prior to approval or a permit of any development activity on that land, the city council has to pass a resolution to identify the cost for the improvements, and they must pay their fair share. Now, it gets kind of tricky there because it talks about you can impose that cost on the people that have given up their right of way too. And so we have to be very clear that we're not imposing it. It's up to you guys what you want to do. But it seemed like the intent of this was if they gave up their right of way, we weren't going to charge them anything in the future for their improvements. If they didn't. Is that correct, John?
Well, I guess the question is if they don't give up the right of way, you're gonna charge them for the cost of the asphalt and the land. And those that are giving up, you're just gonna give them the road for free. I mean, that's not fair to me. It's not the same. So you would tag those people with the cost of the real property. I would assume that's your call, and that when you adopt your resolution in the future,
We'll bring this to you, and there'll be 5 of you decide this.
your call.
So
We just want you to think about it, that's
next
what's going
meeting,
on.
I hope to have some costs put together and a sample of this resolution
Perfect.
that we can discuss a little bit and then bring it back to move forward with it. Because I can't negotiate with them without knowing what these costs are, and we're kind of stuck in a
Well,
chicken and egg situation.
it was a recoupment process. It's not necessarily something to use as a pry bar to get something from somebody.
Right.
It was more of a recoupment, and that's
Right.
the problem. Is they're trying to use it now as a pry to get something.
But we can continue moving on forward and purchase the property, and we can go through the appraisals and all that stuff, and then we would have to do this afterwards. So, we'll keep moving on. My hope is that we can clear everything by the end of this calendar year, and then we can bid out in the winter in our favorable bid season, and then we can construct next summer. We talked last time about constructing after June.
Right, as soon as
Because
school's out.
School's out. So that brought us to some more discussion as we started looking at this. We have this section of 7300 West. It's in the budget, but we're not moving forward on it right now. And if we end up moving forward on that next summer, we could combine these two projects together and maybe get better bids.
Cause that's the
Better economies.
stormwater thing that's been
That had
budgeted and ready to go.
secondary water, storm water, and the road improvements. So, yep, that'd be favorable, so we're looking at combining those, and if that budget all moves along, we will have both those. The third one was, we've been contacted by several residents on Gina Road. We had a meeting a couple days ago with them to talk about their project. We can definitely get up to a certain location with clearing right away, about half the road. The other half, we would have to go through this similar to Houston project process. But, in November, there's gonna be a strategy meeting, I believe, and we're gonna talk a little bit about projects, hopefully. And we can talk about this project and where it falls in line with everything else. If the stars aligned and you could do these 3 projects and get a good deal on everything and get a good contractor, it might be worth it. But it might not be worth it if it puts another critical project at jeopardy. So we'll start looking at that and bring that into that November meeting as a discussion point to see if there's an option to do a Rose Basin roadway project. If you Can you do one, you might as well do all three, right?
Now that we have a
I
common.
just drive it every day. You should listen to the comments that people that come to my house make.
Then you give them
If
addresses
you
and
go,
you say, go
once you
talk
go
to this
past
person.
Rose Canyon Road on 131st, it's like being on a really badly graded dirt road, all the way.
So is there interest in Gina Road at all?
So here, where we're at is we have this new condemnation ordinance you gave us, so that gives us hope that we can do that. Now, there's two really great things. It'd be good to get these things done. My biggest fear is it slows the other two so we don't do them next year even if they get caught up. So just trying to put packages together, we'll have to see. But we don't want to even start it unless the council's going to approve money to build it. Because if we start down this path and then we don't build Gina Road, so you don't have to make this decision until November, but we're gonna be asking you to be looking at the whole list and
Right.
see, we just updating you on this whole plot package.
Cause we already have, the money's already been approved for 73 and
Yeah.
McQuiston. It's just Gina that hasn't.
The question on Gina is, would there be an appetite to do the half, the east half?
Right.
And then still leave a gap and finish working that gap out later?
Right. We all hate that too. Got ya. But thank you.
Anyway, well, to be discussed at the next
It's gonna be a
meeting.
long time if I say everything I
I'm having all sorts of fun with this, it's great.
We're gonna have a block party when this is all done.
Every time I think I'm somewhere,
Road
someone else comes out.
I know, but I need
Okay.
have. Alright, moving on, 3.6, we kinda jumped to it a bit. We have a highlight reel.
Yeah, we're gonna just show the game point drawings, that's all we're doing.
These are what was presented at planning commission.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a couple changes.
To game point?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sherry asked for some specific changes in the curb gutter language and that kind of stuff. She's,
You're fine. It's because my brain couldn't remember.
sorry, no, they were good changes. So I have the clicker, so you saw every one of these words before, except for what
There you go.
John put this in red.
You're awesome, John. Thank you.
That's the first one.
And the second
And
one,
then in the recitals,
Yeah, because that was the one I was like, you're like, it's just recitals. I'm like, got you. Again, my little brain's
It's
like,
there.
but it's in there.
So
Okay,
those are the
awesome.
two
Thank you,
changes.
John.
then this is the old site plan, new site plan. The biggest changes is the planning commission didn't like to see the parking, but this parking's right around here for the restaurant. That's the outbuilding.
And they kind of curved it so people would be less likely to drive through.
Yeah,
et cetera.
kind of prevents the drive-through a little bit. Then this is the old game point, that's the new game point. So these are windows, this is kind of a material that light can shine through, so basically they'll have LEDs, it'll be red, purple, green, kind of cool. You can see the,
And I did like the restaurant thing to where it's gonna be like terraces upstairs. It's much more formal restaurant more than just like a pizza shop kind of thing. It was kind of cool.
today you're not making, you can do anything you want, but the planning commission will be working this through. I just didn't want you to not see this. That just shows you they're still gonna have this selfie wall here. Some stuff. Some zoom ins of just the restaurant.
Emergency room.
What's that?
Emergency room.
Okay.
Might be.
I said no comment, no, I didn't say that. You have to give a comment, so,
Our escape room.
all right.
Oh.
I think I just covered,
3.6, good? Yeah, the highlight reel, awesome. 3.8, discussion regarding encroachment.
So, let me just pause for just a second, that this is a lot of information. I'm not sure we,
Should we do this one after?
well,
Wait.
I kind of promised you we wouldn't be coming back after the full storm, but it's how you all feel.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Mayor, will you be able to join us again after, the general session? Okay,
If not,
if not, we're done anyway.
it's, well, we won't complain if you don't call in or can't connect.
So the next, 23 minutes or less, I'd like to just cover some CM updates. And then we'll come back to the encroachment, because I think it's a little long, later, there's this discussion in 23 minutes.
Yeah, we wanna,
Conversation. I wanted to talk to you about, and this has been in the works for a while, we knew that, one of the members of the Jordan Valley Board will be up for reappointment by the governor's office. And I've heard from a few of you, but not all of you.
I'll tell you, I had conversations with Mayor Staggs today, Mayor Timothy today. Sherry and I caught up before the meeting began, expected others to be here. I spoke to Clint on the phone because I knew he wasn't gonna be here. Thought the other two would be, so I'm ahead of you on that one.
Maybe. I think we've been going almost parallel paths, because I was tasked by a few council members to find out what the interest is. And I found out from Bluffdale and Riverton that the biggest piece I want to put out to council, I don't want to bring up names right now, but is some consideration of looking at some other people to be appointed to that board. I want to make about top points, and you know these, Jared, and you can validate these. The strongest points, and I agree with this. In the past, we've always selected a person that served on this board that all cities, 3 cities agreed to, because it's one appointment by all 3 cities. The governor appoints that person. If we put our person, our first top two to us, and then puts their two, you're 2 different people in Bluffdale, the governor will look at that and go, well, draw a name out of the hat, or I know that person, and I'll appoint that person, or he'll select someone new. What's worked very positive in the past is when all cities collaborate an appointment and agreed on that appointment person, and we submit that as our name by, each city's got to submit a letter to the governor's office, that it gets supported every time. And there's strength in that. And here again, Jared, you chime in anytime you want. Mayor Timothy was very clear, and I agree with him, that when you're dealing with the state, and when you're looking at the southwest corner of the valley, the more we look like we're united in concepts, whether it be transportation or water, it looks like we're aligned on all issues, and the governor does see strength in that, versus each community fighting each other. So Mayor Timothy says, wherever the majority, who they agree with, that's what Bluffdale will agree with too. Now, he knows that Bluffdale's smaller than Riverton and Harriman, so he feels like he's looking for some direction and supportive of whatever the 2 cities can pretty much come up with.
Yeah, I had very good conversations with both Mayor Staggs and Mayor Timothy today, and I think
Mayor Staggs kind of agreed the same thing, that we need to be aligned together, and they got you conveyed, because you actually talked to Warren before I did, and they conveyed that's where you stand. I have talked to Clint, I have talked to Nicole, have not had a chance to talk to Nicole, Sherry or Mayor Watson yet.
I'll tell you what my conversation with them was just that, is it's important for us to be on the same page on this one, and we're circulated a few, and Bluffdale, I believe, is having their council meeting tonight, Riverton next Tuesday, and then both us as Bluffdale again on the 25th. When does the letter need to be sent?
Our next meeting's the 25th, and
What's the date?
some cities pass it by resolution who they want to appoint, so they submit that letter. Really, it's as simple as you give me the person's name, and you get that letter put together, and your signatures on it, and submit that to the governor's office. I think it's another good political thing to pass by resolution, though, of support. This is who we're nominating for that appointment. I think there's strength. We'd like to get on the 25th. I think you got a lot of work amongst yourselves to bring that forward with that.
Deadline of nomination.
It's in November.
Say now, for kind of complete transparency, for us to really agree on who we want to recommend, Riverton's meeting is the 17th, next Tuesday, so I promised them I would have sidebars with our council and make sure we're on the same page and communicate back with them, so I'll touch base with our missing members tonight and have that discussion.
So I have, Mayor Pro Tem was copied on this letter, and then I was sent my copy, and then I made a copy for each council member, and I'll get them to them when I see them. And also, they submitted the resume of one of the candidates with that. My idea was your attachment there. Is it there? Yeah, this is your attachment. Okay. So, as you work through that process, I'll wait for some direction on that from all of you to try to get on. If there's a direction, we have solidarity between the three cities on, you know, the 25th agenda. Other item I had, we're okay with that one. You okay with that, Jared?
Yep.
Okay. Mayor, any comments? Okay. The next item is, another letter from Jordan Valley. They passed a resolution, actually an ordinance, on any new areas action into their, area has to comply to a certain design and landscaping design guidelines. And you heard, Justin talked about it and had that talked about before, how stringent it is. It's actually affected Bullfrog already a little bit of that going in. I wanted to give you that resolution they passed and design guidelines they, in the resolution, so you have that information. I think it's important that all council understands what any future areas at all, and actually they're gonna put pressures on us on even our current areas into their district. The pressure to be, landscape wise, we'll call it. So, it's good information. I thought better just hand it to you unless you digest it. That's what your team here will be dealing with as we see developments come in. And then the last thing I have to check my list. This is, gotta get my emotions together. Tammy, I'm gonna turn it over to you, 'cause I can't do it. It's your creation.
Oh, well, so obviously September is Suicide Prevention Month, and with Utah having the 5th highest suicide rate in the nation, unfortunately, Harriman has also experienced their own number of suicides over the last few years, with one actually taking place just this last weekend. And so we are going to be participating this month in Action Utah's suicide prevention campaign. So we will be sharing a lot of their information out on social media to help educate the public and let them know that there are options, how to notice some of the signs. When people withdraw, they lack engagement, they give away prized items, or they just generally feel hopeless. So we want people to know what the signs are to watch out for, where they can get involved in community groups that can help them recognize these signs, and just some of the programs that are offered. So you will see information like that coming from the city through our social media push, but just know that that's where it's coming from, and that's where everybody will be redirected back to those professionals. We're just helping to share that information to our public, so.
And Harriman High, the reason they hit me so hard is, jeez.
I thought I gave you a minute.
He's doing a whole block, and we participated last year of support, and it actually, I'll send the invite out to all of you. The reason it hits me so hard, because this last suicide, it's not, we didn't know the person, but it's more about the family that found the suicidal person, and they're out there grieving for their family member that was lost through suicide. We know these families, we know these kids, we know these people, and that's why, you know me, it's hard to deal with these situations and love our community, love our people so much, and just seeing this is a problem, that it's a community problem, and there's been a lot of attention drawn to Harriman. We just made a little more national news of a run that's gonna be done in California, and they talked about, the video was done out here at Black Ridge last year.
Yes, with
Alex
Alex Boyer.
Yeah, and how, they talk about Harriman, Utah, about how we have had our share of this problem, this issue. So, it's me, I can picture these kids in my head, and that's where it gets me home, okay?
Yeah, so we just want to share that important information about the programs that are offered, and then we also want to let people know how they can become kind of like a community advocate for suicide prevention. So.
I gotta be done.
No, that's good. Awareness is good. I mean, there's a lot of things with that, other issues, people don't have no idea what's going on if you don't know what the signs are, so it's much more awareness we can have better.
Yeah.
We got 10 minutes, do we wanna end there and come back, do we
But
wanna
that
get
enforcement
staff?
issue is big, like I said before,
Do we,
unless you think we can cover the closed door stuff in 10 minutes.
Yep.
It'll minimize
we'll do that?
after our meeting, it's just
I'm all for it.
updates.
What do you need us to say, Jackie?
Do you have the closed door?
Just a motion to,
I'll find it, is it on here?
And please reshuffle the meeting, it's those for after.
we will also have the HCC meeting get back in here.
Right.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation and the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by you. 52-4-205. Recess the city council work meeting.
Motion, we need a second. All in favor? Jackie, roll call. Start,
Yes.
start, David? Yes, passes. Shut the doors, get it done, get it in there.